huge topic at the moment is qualifying. So we've had a question from Stephen Hart saying, what would be your ideal qualifying system to ensure some variance to the grid, but also a good Q3 session?
The qualifying was a topic that was all over the media and plenty of discussion around it. And I think we had a good qualifying. The 2015 format was okay. Maybe there are ways of optimizing it in a certain way. I can think of having a shootout, the last 8 cars, each car separately on track. Maybe that could be an interesting format. But the fundamental way we should tackle those things is by analyzing them properly, do some scientific research, look at what has worked in the past and what didn't, and just not come up in an erratic way with some kind of ideas like, hold on a minute, I have an idea, why don't we try that? Formula One is a global sport. We have responsibility towards our audiences and fans. And so as long as it's properly assessed, and if it brings benefit to the spectator in terms of excitement, spectacle, maybe variability, which would go against us, I'm fine.
So your ideal system would be?
As long as we don't come up with something better, I'd like to stick with 2015.
The next question comes from IPKW, so thank you very much for your question. Why did you decide to mix the engineers in Lewis's and Nico's garages this year?
I think it's very important to keep the team united and to have a spirit of and feeling around the team. Because both drivers and the respective engineers and mechanics are very competitive, you can have the situation that the overall team result is not so important for them, but rather the result of the single driver. And this can lead to the very famous left and right side of the garage, not working with each other, but working against each other. And we wanted to make sure that this is not happening. Not that we had the feeling that this occurred last year, but I think it's sometimes very good to shuffle the groups around a bit, give them a different experience. It's going to make them grow. Some of them have, some of the mechanics and the engineers have great potential to grow within the team. And I think it's important to be on different positions and have a different perspective on things in the team, and this is why we did it.
Spice things up a bit?
No, the contrary actually. Not spice them up, but just calm them down.
Okay. Okay, so our next question. That was a bit of a
blonde moment.
That was another blonde moment. I'm having many of those. The next question comes from Niharika Jiri. So thank you very much for your question. Who's funnier? Very topical. Between you and Maurizio Arrivabene?
Definitely he's funnier. He is very spontaneous, and sometimes he comes up with really good things. I remember the first thing in his first ever press conference, he was asked whether he would supply an engine to a team that wasn't very famous in paying on time, and he said, "No money, no honey." So I thought that was good. And I don't know if you remember when we had that very rainy race in Austin, various drivers were doing jokes, and he said, "What are we, Cirque du Soleil or what?" So I actually like his humor, and he's a great rival, and Ferrari are great rivals, and we fight hard on track, but we are able to close the chapter and have a beer afterwards.
Good. So off the back of Bahrain, this is a question from RNB7. Has breaking the V10 era circuit record on a power track like Bahrain showed that the hybrid units are the way ahead?
We have broken the all-time record from I think it was Mark Webber in a 10-cylinder engine in 2005 by a couple of tenths. And we've done that with a much heavier car due to the various change of regulations, with a standard tire, not like in the old days when there was tire war between Michelin and Bridgestone. So I think this is a major achievement. It's something we should discuss more in public rather than talking the sport down and talking about the inefficiencies. We should say, hold on a minute, this is a hybrid engine, maybe the most powerful engine ever in a Formula One car, and we've just broken lap records from an era with huge 10-cylinder engines.
So some good news to shout about in Formula One at the moment.
Absolutely, those cars are bloody fast, the fastest cars on the planet.
Okay, the next question is from Mr. Pigs. When you're bored at home, do you ever sit in the bathtub and pretend you're racing?
Mr. Pigs.
Mr. Pigs.
It's a good nickname. No.
Do you sit in the bathtub? Are you a shower man?
I'm a bathtub guy at home, but I'm a bit OCD, so I'm a shower man in hotels. So I sit in bathtubs, but I don't pretend to be a racing driver. That part of my career is over.
Okay, so there you go, Mr. Pigs, now you know. So we've had a question from Rabbi. Do you watch football? If yes, which team do you support, inside and outside of the Bundesliga?
I was never good in football. I was always the last one being elected into the team. So there's a bit of a trauma, actually.
Toto, I'm going to well up.
Yeah, we should talk about that. So I'm not really a keen fan. Obviously, I like following the big Champions League games and the European or World Championships. I admire some of the teams. I like how Bayern Munich has achieved to have sustainable success in football, and I had the chance of meeting some of the guys of Bayern, and it was really impressive. But then also in the UK, I think it's great that an underdog, Leicester, leads in the championship, and that with an Austrian player. So that's really good. Austrians everywhere. Taking over, and I like the strengths of some of the other clubs. I like Chelsea, I like Man U, I like Liverpool, Paris Saint-Germain. But I follow it only when I'm zapping through.
Okay, so another question from Scott Wiseman. Are the 2017 rules anywhere near being agreed upon, and will we have cars that can actually follow each other?
The answer is no. The cars will not be able to follow each other, but we have a yes for the 2017 rules agreed. We have made a step towards more downforce, which means that the car that is following will have more disturbed air because of the wake of the car. You can almost imagine like a motorboat and the wake. And at the moment, when you follow a car closely, you lose downforce. So when you have 100 kilograms of downforce and you follow a car that will drop to 50 or 40, the more near you come, that ruins your tires, and as a consequence, you will not be able to overtake. Great example was Lewis and Max Verstappen in Melbourne. The same will happen next year, but much more. I think adding downforce was a mistake. We like the challenge, and the guys in Aero have taken the fight up. But I think for Formula One general and for overtaking, it was a wrong decision.
Okay, good question, thank you. Another question from Sarah, Sarah Flan. She says, how do you sit down and evaluate targets the team must reach at every race weekend?
That's a very scientific approach. We have the obvious target, which is the target for the year, winning a constructor championship or a driver championship. But we have also targets for every single weekend. The mechanical reliability we want to achieve, that means cars not breaking down or not having any failures. The sporting reliability, in order to make the least mistakes in terms of race execution, strategy, pit stops. And there are various ways to measure that, and Paddy and the team has put a lot of emphasis in that area, and so every Monday after the race we have a big list of all the things we wanted to achieve and whether we have achieved them.
I think you've almost answered Oscar Underwood's question there, so saying after a race weekend, what are the most important points to go over in preparation for the next race and to make sure Mercedes stay at the top? So that's after the race, that's what you do.
Yes, we have a debrief on the Monday morning, and we go through the whole race weekend from the chassis side, from the engine side, and then we have a short list about what's to do, what are the main points for the weekend ahead, for the next race, and this all happens Monday morning.
So we've got some German questions now. So first from Yazin Ismail, what is the biggest problem right now in F1 and how can we solve it? So if you could reply in German and then explain what you've said in English, that would be great.
That's a very difficult question. Also die Frage war, was ist das größte Problem in der Formel 1 und wie können wir es am besten lösen? Ich kann dir die Frage nicht beantworten. Es gibt so viele Dinge, die wir verbessern könnten, spannender machen. wie wir übertragen könnten. Also das ist zu kompliziert. Ich denke, wir haben einen großartigen Sport mit tollen Autos und aufregenden Fahrern. Manchmal, vielleicht sollten wir diese Dinge loben. Wir sollten darüber sprechen, dass wir in Bahrain einen 10 Jahre alten Streckenrekord gebrochen haben mit einem Hybridmotor, dass das die schnellsten Autos auf dem Planeten sind und nicht immer nur darüber, wie wir uns in den Haaren liegen.
So quite a long answer in German. What did you say? Please may you tell me in English.
I forgot. There's many things that are very right. This is a global sport. Very exciting drivers, great cars, the fastest cars on the planet. Just broken the lap record in Bahrain. And sometimes we tend to get stuck into the dysfunctionalities of the sport. We keep arguing about things we shouldn't be arguing. I think it's about providing an exciting sport, making it accessible, thinking about how people actually look at races on the phone or on an iPad. These are the things we should be looking at.
So we've had a question in on Instagram from @MarkSalisburyImages. Toto, can you tell us one piece of advice which has stuck with you throughout your career and life?
One single piece of advice. There is no silver bullet, I guess.
There are 2 silver arrows.
Yeah, but no silver bullet.
No silver bullet, okay.
Maybe one advice would be honest to yourself. Think about your strengths and your weaknesses. Develop the strengths and stick to them. Don't try to fish in another garden if that is not your garden of competence.
I like that phrase, we're going to use that again. So I've got a question for you to end the hashtag Ask Toto. What was it like being interviewed by your wife, Susie, in Bahrain?
For me, it was great. She didn't particularly enjoy it.
Did you practice before?
No, we didn't practice and we didn't speak. She didn't speak for a while to me, I guess almost the whole flight back from Bahrain to Vienna. Yeah, it was difficult because I couldn't hear her. You know, these moderators, they have these earplugs in there, and so she was, and I couldn't hear her. So I said, I can't hear you. So that was the first ever question she has asked me live, and my reaction was not very nice. And then I couldn't hear the other moderator either.
So are you in the doghouse at home at the moment?
Yeah, it wasn't my best moment, I must admit. So officially, sorry Susie for that one, that was a bit rubbish.
There we go, he said it now. Right, well thank you very much for all your answers. Thank you for your questions, hashtag Ask Toto. I'm sure Toto will join us again later on in the season.
Thank you.
Dankeschön.